Trivia piece on Internet Movie Database for Road Warrior states that the film's villain, Lord Humungus, was originally meant to be Max's partner Goose from the previous film. I like this theory a lot, and if it was true, it would make Lord Humungus at least twice as interesting. Unfortunately, this is all complete nonsense. Let's dissect this piece by piece. My basic brain was under the impression that Goose died in the first film, but when I Google, did Goose die in the... all I get is references to this theory. In fact, my basic brain would be correct, as George Miller said in this interview that Goose died before Max and his wife tried to go on vacation. But even if he was just hanging on by a thread, when the apocalypse ramps up its game between Mad Max and Road Warrior, and you've got people killing each other just for gasoline, it's going to be really difficult, nay impossible, for someone who needs an iron lung just to survive to, survive. But if you tell me Goose is a tough old bird, he pulled through, and when things got worse, while Max continued to hold on to a slither of his humanity, Goose went in the other direction, again, I like that idea. It's very interesting. But what evidence do we have? Internet Movie Database says Humungus has horrible burns behind his mask. George Miller says this as well in the aforementioned interview. And I mean, agree to disagree. What little we can see of his face, he looks pretty normal to me, and from behind, he's bald, but he definitely doesn't look as bad as what Goose would have looked like. It's not in the movie, but the official production document, the preamble, states Road Warrior takes place 3 years after Mad Max. I'm not a doctor, but trigger warning for a charred body, I'm pretty sure this guy would still look pretty messed up 3 years later. Internet Movie Database says Humungus's marauders use police vehicles from the first film, and what's a nice way of saying get your eyes checked? Here's the standard vehicle of the MFP from the first Mad Max. Now here's the dune buggy looking things Humungus's crew uses. Even if this one was true, which it patently is not, the marauders could have totally stolen police vehicles. They're willing to do a lot worse over the course of Road Warrior, so I see no reason they couldn't have done that even though they didn't. Then it says Humungus has a similar sidearm to what the MFP uses in the first film. Now I don't know weapons, but the International Movie Firearms Database does, and a quick look at the first Mad Max shows me this, and this, but nothing that looks like this. Any old clown can edit Internet Movie Database, and they don't have to source what they put in. Everywhere I've looked, I cannot find anything credible where George Miller says something about Goose being an S&M terrorist. Again, it's a cool idea, and I want it to be true, but I'm not convinced this was ever in George Miller's mind. What he did say was that Humungus was meant to be a former military man, not the same thing as MFP, and that he had survived an explosion. Again, I see no visual evidence that this guy has any burns, but I'll take Miller's word for it. My gut tells me somebody read this interview and said, you know who else suffered burns and was in something not quite like the military, but sort of? But there is just nothing in or out of the film that supports this guy being someone from Max's past, much as I think it would have been an interesting development. But as I've said before, I think George Miller was, at least starting with Road Warrior, going for Max being a post-apocalyptic update on Clint Eastwood's Man with No Name, and that's easier to do when he has no connections to his past in the film.